Unless you've been living under a rock, then you know that the Boston Celtics are currently one of the most dominant teams in basketball and are playing at a level we haven't seen them play at since taking home that championship in 2008. Love or hate the three-point heavy playing style, you can't deny this team's reign over the league, as it's yet another season of them being elite on both ends and tearing through opponents every single night. Sure, Cleveland does own that #1 spot in the East, but my gut tells me that this C's team is still the top dog in the league as things stand. Despite all of this, I still get that feeling that somewhere out there we have a large amount of NBA fans that aren't buying the Celtics thing. I mean, look at the response after they won that title last season. Rather than hearing a cavalcade of congratulations and good jobs, the conversation that tore through social media was how easy their run was. There was limited dialogue about how great this squad was in the postseason and more about how bad the East was as a whole. Maybe that's just a common trend with NBA fans these days, where we always tend to focus on the negatives instead of giving proper credit, but I don't think any team has gotten that worse than Boston. To be even more specific, I don't think there's a player who gets that type of reception more than Jayson Tatum. Imagine winning a championship, which is something that your biggest critics said you didn't have the potential to do, and still getting a ton of backlash. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to Jayson Tatum. While he proved his biggest doubters wrong, he still couldn't shut them up. And look, I do understand some of the criticism a bit when it comes to Tatum. He did not have an amazing playoff run from a shooting standpoint, but something has to be said about just how great he was as an all-around threat. He literally did the thing we praise other guys for. What's something you hear all the time? If your shot isn't falling, find a way to make an impact elsewhere. Tatum literally did that the entire postseason, putting up solid rebounding and assist numbers to help fuel the Boston offense. And that team doesn't win that title if it wasn't for Tatum's all-around play. Yet the support for him outside of the Celtics fan base was pretty silent. And him having that rough stint with Team USA during the Olympics didn't help him either. The focus on what Tatum doesn't do well completely makes us lose focus on what he does well. And what we've seen from Tatum over these last 7 years has been something worthy of nothing but praise. I've always been extremely impressed in how he almost has completely rebranded himself in his game. Let's expand on that a bit. Remember what the scouting report was on him back when he was first coming out of Duke? He was primarily labeled as a multi-level scorer, heralded especially for his ability to create his own looks off the dribble. Playmaking and some of those other things were a bit of an afterthought. Now, could he do some of those things at a high level? Sure, but Tatum's identity in college and early on in his NBA career was that of a scorer. For example, when that 2020 season hit, it became apparent that he was one of the elite up-and-coming shot creators in the game, taking the mantle as Boston's go-to option on offense after Kyrie's departure. Look no further than this game where Tatum put up his then career high against the elite 2020 Lakers defense, comfortably getting to his looks and torching any defensive schemes thrown at him. Speaking of the Lakers, around this time is when we started hearing those Kobe comparisons. It's become a massive trend over the last few years to compare young stars to the legend. It was a thing with Devin Booker. We're even seeing it now with Anthony Edwards a little bit, and obviously Tatum got his fair share around the 2020 season. Unfortunately, a number of disappointments in the playoffs made us start to think otherwise, and questions about Tatum's reliability as a first option scorer began to arise. Now, on the bright side of this, what we saw was that even with the playoff struggles and uncertainty surrounding Tatum, he began to add more to his overall repertoire as the years went by. He got more aggressive when attacking the basket, we saw massive leaps as a playmaker, and he even became a more intimidating rebounder as time went on. Tatum simply morphed into becoming an elite Swiss Army knife type of player. He recognized that if his impact as a scorer was limited, there had to be other things he did to impact winning. There's been a total reinvention of his approach to the game. He made this flawless transition from being a score-first player in that same vein of a Carmelo Anthony or a Paul Pierce or a Kobe into being simply one of the best all-around players in basketball. That ability to impact winning even when the shot isn't falling was super apparent in last year's final series against the Mavericks that I mentioned a bit earlier. His team high 6 assists and nearly 10 rebounds per game in the postseason were crucial to Boston's championship run. In fact, his performance in the closing game of the series against Dallas included a 31 point, 11 assist, and 8 rebound outbreak, making for one of the better closing performances over the last few seasons. All of that has carried into this season, which is arguably his best, as he's putting up 29 points, a career high 9.5 rebounds, and another career best 5.6 assists a night. The evolution of Tatum's game is the epitome of what I believe makes a player truly great, and that is this idea that if your shot isn't falling and your most key strength is limited, you have to find other ways to impact the game. That to me is what makes a player a superstar level player. You Jokic has mastered that. Giannis has mastered it. Steph Curry's mastered it. LeBron did too. And we can put Tatum on that list as well. He masterfully etched a new role and identity for himself and found something that works for him and for that Celtics offense as a whole. This team didn't just win a championship last season for no reason. They won because everyone on that roster embraced their duties and found a niche for themselves to fit in. For JT, that included elevating his all-around game. So while he's improved his game and while he's established himself as one of the best all-around threats in the league, the question now is, have fans taken the time to fully appreciate it enough?